are the queen, absolutely. And I work at Children's Hospital in Orange County. So that, I think that's all the introduction we need to do.
Read it in big
I'm going to talk about low-dose mini-glucagon. And I will tell you that this came about, and we tried, I'm going to show you this, because of the profound numbers of hypoglycemia we have at camp and during the night. And that was what drove us to try this. We were starting to use it in our clinical practice. So that's what this is about. And I'm going to show you the study we did and then how we are now applying it at camp. I do teen session, have for a number of years. I used to do the little ones, but this is teen. I've done teens for a lot of years now, so this is the group that we have used this in. So again, hypoglycemia is common, you know, maybe 20 events per 100 patient years in our whole diabetes population. And it is kids out of control and kids in control. It's a common problem. And we know that there's more than what we even identify. This population of kids doesn't have hypoglycemia unawareness usually, although we've occasionally had that. And so, but there's still concern about what the consequences of hypoglycemia are. However, at camp, it definitely interferes with camp activities, and it interferes with kids sleeping. Am I standing right in your way?
Because you're moving, so I can
Okay, I can't stand still.
No,
All right. It may be more common at camp than at home. And with altitude, the change, increased activity, the change, and what I have been suspicious of for a long time that was just published in Diabetes Care, that a lower fat diet, which camp is compared to the way the kids eat, requires less insulin than a high fat diet that the kids are often eating at home. And I was so glad to finally see this, 42% more insulin. No wonder, even if we're cutting back 15%, which we do, that's not close to the difference that could be.
So should that say 42% more insulin for a low-fat meal?
Needed for a high-fat meal. 42% more insulin is needed. And this was a closed-loop study that showed that you need more. I mean, we all know that pizza, kids get high after they eat pizza. We see that, but this is probably...
Is that published? Can we get that?
Published Diabetes
Oh, there
Care.
it is.
And yes, it is there, and I actually brought a copy if you want to make it. So it definitely adds to the hypoglycemia, is the bottom line. So glucagon raises blood sugar levels. We know that by converting to glycogen. And the half-life is 8 to 18 minutes. And I think Dr. Buckingham this morning showed you his continuous glucose monitoring study on that, where he gave just glucagon, nothing else. And what I want to say as we go, we have never done that at camp, where we just give glucagon. But we do it, his data is absolutely supports this basic data that we reach a peak in about 15 minutes, and it'll still be at 30 minutes and then it decreases after that. And his data with the glucose sensor really shows that very nicely. So there are two articles, and I reviewed this. There are two articles describing mini-glucagon, and basically everything since then references these papers. So the first one was Haymond and Schreiner's paper, and I will go over these two papers, but those are the two references. So in this paper, they used the mini-dose glucagon for kids who were sick and low, and they did these kids, they used 10 micrograms or 1 unit per year of age, and then they, the blood sugars below 62, rising up to around 150, and it was well tolerated. So that was the beginning. And then the other one is the Brisbane experience, where they did basically the same thing using a microgram per year of age, up to 15, and the child was managed at home. And additional doses were required in some of them, again, because of the short duration of action, and said it was practical and effective. And based on that, we started trying it with our sick kids that were taking insulin and throwing up and all of that.
I'm sorry, did you say it's 10 micrograms per year of age or 1 microgram per year of age?
No, 10.
10.
1 unit.
1 unit.
One
That's
unit in
what-
an insulin syringe.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when you Google, now what's coming up is you Google glucagon rescue, and Wikipedia comes up. Children with Diabetes website has information. Nationwide Children's, Columbus has it, and all of them are using this basic protocol. 0 to 2 years, they use 2 units or 20 mics, and 3 to 15 years, 1 unit per year of age, and 16 plus the maximum dose for mini glucagon is 15. And that is what is being used. And there's one reference to this being used at Diabetes Camp, where they were having 4 episodes per day, and they treated it with glucose and then some glucagon, and again saw this response to 40s, 50 blood sugars up to 150 post-glucagon, and all returned to normal activity in 30 minutes. So we decided, well, first we decided we were going to try it at camp. And we introduced, our basic protocol is that we do 4 to 6 ounces of juice, and followed by, when the blood sugar is up around 100, we will then give the carbohydrate and protein snack. And that was the basis, and then glucagon for emergency in the standard dose. But this was the problem. We would have kids that 4 to 6 ounces of juice did not begin to treat their low. And they were drinking more and more and more, or it would come up to 65, and then it would come up to 72, and they were sitting in here, or we were sitting with them in the middle of the night, trying to get that blood sugar up, just so we could treat it with protein and carb. And that's what was happening. And so that was the motivation then to try something else. So we decided to just clinically try it at camp. And we did that, and I'm going to tell you how we did that toward the end of the talk. But basically, we did this, and then we looked at the data in retrospect and said, we just want to see if there's data that supports what we did. Clinically, it was clear that it worked. There was no question, but we wanted to look at it. So we retrospectively looked at this, and we had, again, like every camp, kids had lower A1Cs. We were no different with that. Yes.
When you say repeat episodes in 32, is that in the same temporal frame? Like
That would
they
have
went
been
back down,
in the
or-
days, no. This would
Some other
have
time during
been
camp.
that while they were at camp,
Oh.
during that week that we monitored them. Yes, and then, so we had 20% of the episodes on day 1, and 35% occurred 4 to 5 days, and about 70% occurred in the evening. So it was evening activities, and again, at teen camp, that's often dances, or it is active, active
Hormones.
exactly, hormones, yes. And then midnight, and then when we did the midnight rounds. So we said at that point, well, the other thing we did is we needed to give, we felt like we needed, for continuity at camp, we needed to give dosing. And we didn't, it was basically the person treating that low at that moment was going to decide if they were going to give 10 or 20 units. It was totally a practicality. And what ended up happening was that the kids that had the lowest blood sugars or were the most symptomatic ended up getting the 200 mics. And some of the other physicians that knew we were doing this were actually really worried that 10 would not be enough for these kids. So we just tried it, then went back and looked at it. And the bigger dose did raise the blood sugar more, but the lower dose raised it very adequately. So that was totally after the fact that we had looked at this. So then we did a prospective study, and we had 13 to 17 kids being age of 15, 65 campers participated in this study. And we obviously wanted to see how this was going to work. And we compared it, and I'm going to show you that data. So during camp, again, hypoglycemia daytime and nighttime. What we normally do is blood sugars are checked between midnight and 2 a.m. We check all campers the first night, and any campers who have blood sugars less than 100 with a history of lows, or anyone who wishes to be checked. And these kids don't want lows in the night either, and we check them. And it is standard procedure that we lower all campers' basal and bedtime insulin 10 to 15%. And that is a pain in the neck to do the first night of camp. But I will tell you, we have lower blood sugars. I mean, we have fewer low blood sugars if we lower that the first night. Then, if there are kids there are some that will absolutely argue with us, we are not going to change them. And frankly, that first night, we don't take that on, we just mark who didn't lower their basal, and those kids are checked 100%. And if they were low in the night, we usually don't have trouble lowering it the next night. If they are high in the morning and didn't need it, or normal in the morning and we're fine, then fine, we leave it. I don't have a commitment having to do that. Our goal is to keep camp safe without lows.
So do you do temporary basal rate?
We actually
Or do a pattern?
we actually changed their basal rate. We did not do temp
You
basals.
did not do
We
that?
did not do temp
So
basals.
you lowered it 10-15% for the entire...
For overnight,
Just for
overnight, overnight.
So
we
what
did
if
not.
they're only on one basal rate? Then did you just add another basal rate and do it just for the nighttime?
We covered them at night, yes, yes. And then we, if they were low overnight, we lowered the basals in the day too. If they were not, then their daytime stayed the
And why
same.
not temporary basals?
It
Just out of
is,
curiosity.
I don't have an objection to it. The kids know how to change their own basal rates usually. And because we have 130 kids or 110 kids and we're trying to do it all and get them to bed on time, it is totally a practical decision to do it. And then we keep track of them. We know the basals that they came in on.
Right.
And then we mark the basals
And you change it back to their pre-camp before they go?
when they go. Yeah,
I was
that
gonna
is,
say,
and they are told to do that, yes.
The kids that we see are so sedentary that when they check in, we change the basal rates, then we do temporary because then we have to change them all back. The
Yes.
last day, and it's easier to do it that way. Unless, it's just about the physicians that we have that volunteer at camp, one of them knows the kids. And there are a few kids who we don't change because we know that they are involved in after-school activities,
Right.
dancing and things
Right.
like that, we don't change them. But
Right.
the other kids, we just have a general rule that we change them, because when they come and check in with the parents, we try to get an idea of their activity level.
Mhm.
And we've been changing them, just put it in a temporary.
I mean, we have kids that live at altitude. We don't usually change them.
Yeah.
Yes, so we do make exceptions, but we keep track of the exceptions.
The Lantis, then do you, if they're on Lantis, you cut the Lantis by
We
10%?
cut the lenses too, so then that's a whole 24-hour.
By 10%?
By 10%, by 10%. Now, some of the kids, because they're a lot repeaters, they'll know they get low at camp, and they actually may want it lowered more, a little more, and if they're telling us that, and they've been here, we do it.
Even if they're high, if they come in and they've been historically high at camp, you don't do.
Then we wouldn't do it, no. And we have kids, I mean, those kids coming in with A1Cs that are 10%, you know, that aren't in good control on shot or pump, those we wouldn't change either. We end up probably increasing those while they're here, so.
Or I would argue
Yes.
you end up lowering them as the week goes on, because they're probably
Yes.
not taking all their
Right.
insulin. And then they're getting out, and then
Absolutely, absolutely.
Everybody knows camp is barely first.
Yes.
Just like,
Absolutely.
it's not the real world.
Right. And we're talking to the kids when the teams go out to the cabins. We are talking to the kids, we're negotiating them. If there is a absolutely resistant child, which we had one we knew from last year, or from a year ago, that she was gonna fight us all the way on this. And we know her peds endocrinologist, who is actually adamant that we not change anything that she does. And so I'm not gonna take that battle on when I have 130 kids.
His fear a lot.
That's it, we're gonna watch her, absolutely. And she was low, well, the first night she was not low. So we acknowledged that when we made rounds in the morning. I went down and we acknowledged that. And of course, I mean, she was just, and then by the third day of camp, she was low, 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 all the time. And anyway, back to some of the issues we were talking about earlier today. You know, anyway, we worked it out. She had a good camp. We didn't have major problems with her. It worked, but yeah, there are those kids. So, so we let, again, this is clinical, and I totally get that research studies need to be carefully monitored and go by the rules. I don't see camp functioning that way. And so if someone was really low, but still talking to us and shaky or symptomatic, we always let the person treating decide whether they were okay. But the majority got the 10 unit of the 100 microgram dose. Now, we did, they are craving, they want juice, they want something to eat right now. So we gave them the 4 ounces of juice. They got the glucagon, and when their sugars were up, which was 10 minutes later, I'll show you, then they got the same protein and carb snack that everybody else got. And if, like we would do for a kid, you didn't get glucagon, just got the juice, raised the sugar, you know, and it came up. So it is an addition to getting 4 ounces of juice, but I will tell you, none of those kids needed 2 or 3 treatments of juice at all with that. Anyway, let me show you.
Did you have to get, this is a retroactive study, right? So you don't have to go to the IRB report, or did you have to go?
We had to for this prospective study.
You did?
Yes.
And what IRB report, you're at
At
Chalk?
Chalk, at Chalk. We did not, the retrospective study we did, that was really, to see if it worked or not. That
But
was
the
it.
original you had to go through, right?
But for the prospective study,
Yeah.
we did,
Can I
yes.
ask you a question?
And get consent, by the way, from the parents.
Just about the checking after treatment at 10 to 15 minutes. I mean, our experience has been that kids tend to get overtreated with retreatment when they get checked too early. And it seems, in the years that I've been doing camp, and I am not a diabetologist, I'm just a pediatric endocrinologist
Right.
who does diabetes camp for 1 week a year.
Yes, okay.
But so I'm no expert in diabetes, but it's certainly been our observation that if we wait 20 minutes, we're less likely to retreat. Because 10 to 15 minutes just seems to, because then you get into this 15 minute, 15, 15, 15, 15, and then you've given the kids 60 grams, and
Right,
then they're high.
right,
And if
absolutely,
you just waited a little longer,
right. Yes,
and which the big problem is they, of course, they're not getting back to their activities,
right,
but then you're not chasing that high later.
right, exactly. And that is true with the oral treatment. And, well, let me just show you the numbers, and then you can read your own.
Although we use glucose tablets, not juice, I mean, with the tablets, taking them longer to eat them, so.
Well, it doesn't, it takes longer for the juice. I mean, 4 ounces of juice may not treat a low. If it is, my opinion is that if we've got a low that's stable, and someday we'll know this from the sensors, but if we've got a low that's stable, we can bring that up pretty well, as you know. But if it's a dropping low, 4 ounces of juice
Right.
is not going to cover that. So, again, just to show you the kids, the mean A1C was 8, but we have, for the campers involved, 81% of these kids were on pumps, and that's true for this teen camp that will have that many on pumps. 83% of these campers lowered their basal rates at bedtime, so that goes with what we're saying. There are some that for whatever reason do not. And of the ones that did not lower the insulin, they did have a little higher A1C.
And they lowered it only at nighttime.
That's how we start.
Okay.
If they're low, we lower it daytime too.
Okay.
If they start having lows daytime, we lower basal as well as the insulin carb ratios. And we do that with Lantus, and we do it with kids on shots too. So, of the 65 kids, there were 47 that had low blood sugars. 16 of those had 1 episode, 18 had 2 to 3 episodes, and 13 had 4 to 7 episodes. And this confirms, I mean, you get to know the names of the kids that are having repeated lows because they're up there with you. And there definitely were a group that had repeated lows in spite of lowering, in spite of checking that they're not over-bolusing. It just what happens. Frequency of hypoglycemic events most occurred in the first 4 days of camp, and you can see that. But day 4, if it was just altitude, in the years gone by, when we used regular NN and lowered it, in those old days, by about the 4th day, we were upping the doses. Is that not true? We were upping the doses again. So it bothered me, but I think this is related down to 4 days of a lower fat diet, and we're seeing the exercise effect for the kids, like you're saying, that are sedentary and then they're active up here. And so by day 4, we are still having a lot of hypoglycemia in spite of what we've done.
And you've kept the insulin doses lower.
We kept the insulin doses, basal rates lower, and then we start with the insulin carb ratios being, less insulin. So we start changing that too. And the N, if they're on N in the day, if they are on Humalog MDIs, those get changed too. Again, trying to prevent the lows. And the time of day, many occurred in the evening. And I'll tell you what we have done to try to help that. And then also in the afternoon and evening hours. And obviously they're scattered, but there was this, during activity time, this higher rate of low blood sugars. So in summary, as far as the blood sugars go, the mean blood sugar before treatment was 55, or roughly 45 to 65 in this group. And after treatment, the mean was 88. but a pretty wide standard deviation there.
How soon after?
Yes, and I'm going to show you that. Whoops, that didn't move. Oh, no. We used both juice, we used glucagon and plus juice or glucose tablets, followed by a snack, which that should say that that's our standard protocol. And we had a group that were treated with just the juice, followed by the snack. And the time of the repeat blood sugar, 67% were within 10 minutes and 82% within 15 minutes. So between 10 and 15 minutes after the dose was given. So if you can see this, okay, if we look at the blood sugar levels, and then this is the column of treatment with glucagon, this is oral treatment only, the blood sugars were lower in the treatment with glucagon. The blood sugar after treatment was higher with glucagon. And 16 minutes after treatment, which is back to your point about a little more time, and it goes up. But again, the levels were higher if we gave 10 units of glucagon, and we got more of a rise in that 15-minute period of time. And we didn't look beyond that, but
And then you would give them the carb or protein snack
at
at that point.
that point in
Keep
time,
them up.
absolutely.
And did you give the protein and carb snack, did you think about when the next meal was gonna be? So if it was gonna be within an hour, don't do that?
Yes.
So you're not then dealing with the high.
Yes, absolutely. We did that. We would give, if they were going to go up to eat within a few minutes, we would not give that whole, I mean, crackers and peanut butter, graham crackers and peanut butter is the thing they love, and the celiac kids are getting, you know, the cheese and their gluten-free crackers. And that was the sort of standard, one or the other. And the kids that weren't gluten-free could also have cheese and crackers if that's what they wanted. And we had one camper that was allergic to nuts, which was a problem if we were in the night in the cabin giving peanut butter and crackers. And so we actually did a modification. It turned out that he probably did not have a bad peanut allergy, so it being in the cabin wasn't, but we were cautious with that cabin, and the kids could go right out on the porch and eat it, so it wasn't in the cabin or in there.
We ended
Wasn't
up using frozen Go-Gurt sticks at my basketball camp at night because of that.
That's a
So we
good
didn't have to
idea.
deal with peanut butter.
Absolutely.
People with
Good.
And you're using glucagon through the day as well.
Yes,
So at night
yes.
and through the day.
Yes, so that's back, if the kids come in, and now, we've done this for several years, so if they've had glucagon, they ask for it, but they will come in and we will use it. Now, obviously, if they're 70s and above, we are not going to use this. If they are, if they come back to us, well, I'll show you in a minute how we do that. We know the blood sugar was lower in the treated group. We know that after the blood sugar after was higher than just the juice at 16 minutes, and it was higher after the glucagon, and we were getting those levels up close to 100, which is what we wanted to do before we gave them the snack. So it was safe. We had no significant side effects at all. Nobody got sick. Blood sugars rose more briskly, which got them out of here or back to sleep sooner. And again, activity times in the evening, in the afternoon, up to the first 4 days of camp, we had lots of them, and it worked. Now, any questions about that? And then I'm going to tell you how we really use it now.
So if, let's say they they were off, I don't know, they were, you all don't have a field here, but they were in a field and they had a low, were they carted back here? Or was the glucagon given there, or at that point?
We always have medical staff with them with a pad to
Okay.
take care of it, and it would be given there.
Okay.
We have gotten so that we make these out daily, and, which by the way, we can't find how long, once it's made up,
I was gonna say.
it lasts, but our clinical experience, and this comes from way back when I was, when Dr. Chinook was here, and